we talk a lot about at the shows why we're there. Why, what are we doing? Is it to make money? Is it to do this? And I think the idea is we realize it is a labor of love, and it's a way to find freedom for ourselves, freedom for expression. My name is Craig Sheffield. I'm a photographer here in Sarasota. I do a lot of local photography, and I do a lot of Florida photography. It's kind of where my passion is. It's what I like to do. It's what I love to do. So it just translates well for me to bring that to other people. So in more of a professional sense, about 6, 7 years, I've kind of always been doing it, just at a hobby or amateur level. But yeah, I really started getting serious about probably 6 years ago. So, well, at the time I had a boat, and I would go offshore quite a bit fishing. I loved being out, way out there, out in the blue waters, and it was just a way to get away from everything. And I, twice, 2 years in a row, I came across whale sharks right out in the Gulf of Mexico, off the coast of Sarasota here. And I didn't even know they were out there. And then I started realizing that, they are pretty rare sightings, but they do show up about the same time every year. And the first time I saw them, all I had was a cell phone with me, and I was able to capture some of that. And then the next time, I started getting, like GoPros and things I can, take pictures with underwater. I started getting into drones, and really, wanting to capture them better and just capture that experience. And then, it really then led to the idea of, the different things I've done in life have taken me to, just great places, and a lot of places that you just can't even, describe to people. And you don't even think about it, that, there's a lot of people that never get to see that. And so I realized this is a way that, I can do what I love to do, and then express, what I'm doing through my eyes, and let other people see, just my life and what I love. I think we talk a lot about at the shows why we're there. Why, what are we doing? Is it to make money? Is it to do this? And I think the idea is we realize it is a labor of love, and it's a way to find freedom for ourselves, freedom for expression. Freedom just to, I don't know. A lot of artists, I think, are left brain thinkers, out of the box people that, kind of live out of the box. And I think it gives us a way to, participate in this world in a way that we can just be ourselves. I use a lot of different technical techniques too, to, really kind of separate my pictures, bring out my own style. Like, I think in my heart, I love black and white, and I have some black and white photos I do, but I think my true expression is color. I really, really love color. And so, I try to get that emphasized by, a lot of long exposure, a lot of just working to be out there enough in the right light to really work with light to, where there's light, moving around, and just, trying to pull out what I can, of the light and the colors that I see. Yeah, this was so lightning photography is my favorite photography. It's kind of brings out in me my kind of the adrenaline side that I have. So I spend a lot of time in the summer. That's a lot of the freedom I get to express myself, is because I'm doing shows fall, winter, and spring. Is I get to chase a lot of storms around here, and we have the best storms in the nation here. And this particular picture was during 2020. It was during COVID, when everything was shut down. The bridge was red, white, and blue all summer, and really all during the pandemic there. And yeah, so I knew I wanted to get a shot with the bridge, red, white, and blue. And this particular day, I'd camped out at the end of one of the old bridges for the Skyway, and I had another storm chaser that was out that day. He was up north by Clearwater Beach, and he's like, "What are you doing down here? All the storms are, up here." But I just felt that if I sat there, I don't know, very spontaneous. I'm a very spontaneous person. And next thing you know, Tampa Bay, what it's known for with those, shallow, warm waters, sure enough, some storms started developing right over me. And next thing you know, I'm all set up, ready to go. And this lightning strike comes crashing down. I had another friend that was out chasing too. His name's Damon Powers. I've learned so much from the guy. He's probably one of the best storm photographers I know. But he was actually on Anna Maria Island at a distance from the bridge, but still had it very small. And he caught the whole storm, the top, and everything coming all the way down. I'm just under the rain cloud there, getting the very bottom of it. So he captured the whole thing. So I got to see that whole picture. But lightning photography, it's very spontaneous. It's very much learning, the storms and how they form here, and trying to get ahead of them, trying to anticipate, where those strikes are going to be. And it's just, it's a freedom that I love in the summer. Yeah, my background was in the telecom world, and so I have a very technical background. And I learned there that tools are very important. Having the right tools, can really make a big difference. So I try really hard to have a good tool case of equipment that I can use. We were talking about some of my images that really help is one thing I like, and I think that really stands out at the shows and when everybody sees my work big is sharpness. I work really hard on getting very sharp images, and the equipment helps. Now, I also believe that the best camera you have is as they say, is the camera, the one you have with you. And not always do I have all my gear with me, and sometimes I'm out just with a cell phone, and I still snap images with that, and I work really hard to work on composition and everything, even with my cell phone. So yeah, I think equipment's important, but I think starting with what you have and working with the light that's given to you is probably the most important to develop your eye, and then also develop understand what story you want to tell. Is very important. How you want to express yourself, and I think you start to develop your own style. I think that's very important to set yourself apart. These days everybody's a photographer. There's a lot of photography out there, and so to really be able to stand out and express yourself and connect with people on an emotional level that emotionally connect with your work is what's going to happen when you start to develop that style and you really express yourself. So I think starting with what you have and what you can afford to start with is just getting out there. It's getting out there, learning what you love, what you can see, and how you can capture it. I mean, I pretty much jumped right into it. I think I'm going on my 7th year. So I don't know. It was one of those spontaneous things where I started taking photos and started realizing that people like them, and there might be something there for me. And so I kind of blindly just went out and saw what I'd have to do to get my work out there to try to sell it. And so I saw that, okay, here's how I can apply for the art shows. Then I realized I had to have a display or a picture of my booth, which I didn't have. So I went out and I just blindly got a tent. I got walls. I got framing material. I printed pictures. I framed them. And then I applied for art shows, not even knowing if I'd get accepted. And then once I did get accepted, I showed up at the art show. Didn't even know how to put my tent together. and was watching YouTube videos on how to do that while I'm at the show. And then I'm out there thinking, what if nobody even likes these or buys these, or so it's kind of a you just got to kind of put your your foot out there and dive in and try it. And so that's how I pretty much got started. It's one of those things that with artists, I think we have to wear our heart on our sleeve a little bit. So you got to be open to criticism, rejection, but also being open to people asking questions and you sharing your stories, sharing really your heart. And I think that's what I've learned the most about art is a heart-to-heart connection, right? It's our expression of what we love, and then it's someone else connecting at an emotional level with what they love, and us coming together. And I think that's what makes it so different than just decor or going to a store and buying something. Is you're buying something that connects you with your client on an emotional level, and and that's what's special. And I think if you're not out there talking to them, sharing your heart, being vulnerable, you're going to have a hard time. Oh, absolutely. Some of these shows we start extremely early in the mornings on like a Saturday setup. Sometimes I can get there 2, 3 in the morning and start setting up, and then by the time the show starts, I'm very tired. Sometimes on a Saturday, and I might be more withdrawn, kind of hiding behind my booth, not talking as much, and yeah, and I find that really affects my sales. And then I'll go home, sleep well that night on a Saturday night, show up Sunday and be rested and more talkative, more engaging, and absolutely that helps. Yeah, I mean, it's critical. Oh, I like to keep. I think just being as open as possible. I think you don't want it too closed in. You want people to be able to flow in and out. You want it to be very inviting. And so I think the more open you can keep it, the more you allow people, maybe, to come in from different directions, really helps with attracting people, keeping, more than just one or two people in there. Because sometimes I find if it's a crowded space and you got a couple people in there, the people that might be really trying to connect with you might not have access to get in. So I found that as open as I can make it. Well, I mean, I have a story that I like to tell. I tell a lot of stories, and I was an old fisherman, so sometimes my stories get a little bigger, as the years go on. But I like telling stories, and one of my favorite stories is about my own first art experience I had. I was down in the Four Corners area in Mesa Verde, and on the Navajo Nation's land there, and they were having a little art show in the parking lot there at the visitor center. And I'd bought my first piece of art. It was a reproduction of a painting of a local painter there, and and for me at the time, it was a stretch to buy it. It was, I didn't have a lot of money at the time, but I really liked the piece and I wanted it. And so I still have that piece. And what I like to tell people is I still connect with that piece. I still love it. I tell them that, I've been through multiple cars, multiple houses. I hate to say women, whatever you go through so many things in life, but I think art, kind of, transcends all of that, and it holds your heart if you really love it and you have a connection with it, and it can stay with you forever when things in this world can be so temporal. Well, absolutely, yeah. I think you really, again, going back to that, wearing your heart on your sleeve, you show what inspired you, why you loved that, why you took it, what that day was like. I try to bring them into that day. I try to bring them into that setting, what was happening around, why the light was the way it was, why this animal or this lightning bolt, or, I really try to describe every, piece of it. And most importantly is show my passion for, what I do. And, yeah, again, it's vital. I think that's one of the hardest things for any artist to come up with when they first come out is pricing. Pricing is a very difficult thing, and I think one of the first things I learned from a YouTube video was with pricing, it's you got to be fair to yourself, and you got to be fair to your potential customers and clients that come in. Because pricing's everywhere. Everybody's got different price points. They have different, levels of where they are. They could be a hobbyist, that are doing the shows. They could be, a true starving artist. The whole spectrum's out there. So the whole, pricing's just all over the place. But I think how you bring value to it is people just have to understand that, your art or your photography it's a culmination of your life. It's I think Ansel Adams said it best, but and I can't quote him directly, but it's the loves that we experience. It's the the dark times we go through. It's our life. It's our adventures. It's everything that comes together and helps us to capture what we love, and then it comes into the time we put into it. What's our time, worth? With lightning photography, obviously, there's an adrenaline rush to that for me, and there's risk to it. So, a lot of times, one of those things that you'll hear when you're out there, some of the criticism is why does a piece of, art or a photograph, why is it this much? Some people will say, why is it that less? Why does it not cost that much? You get both, but when someone just says a picture's a picture, that's one of those things that you have to just, as you wear your heart on your sleeve, you just have to understand it's going to happen, and you have to take it. But you can explain to those who are connecting, why there is value in what you do and what that value looks like. And I think everybody's time is different. Everybody's, what they've invested into it's different. So I think that's why there's such a wide range of pricing you see out there. I think really developing a style and something that becomes a signature in your work, I think really helps. A lot of times what we get for sales is people that come back because they want another piece from you. They've had your piece for a year, and they've connected with it. They like it. And so they come back and they buy more. They might buy, one or two, but repeat sales are very important. I think the more open I've gotten with my booth, and I think the more, the way I lay it out, the way I let it kind of flow, and how I kind of put different themes together. I've found that if I get too sporadic and have my story and my theme is just all over the place, it might confuse people too. I think it's important to really be able to be diverse, but have a style that connects. Yeah, I think one thing I do and I offer, and I think it's very important too, especially as a local artist that I do a lot of shows here in the Sarasota area, is I offer with my bigger prints. If you buy one, I'll bring it over and I'll hang it for you, put it in your home for you, and and being able to see that connection of not only, hey, I'm doing something that I love. I've captured something, someone's connected with it, but now I've brought it, into their home, and I get to see where they're putting it, and realizing that they're gonna have this connection with it and this joy from something that I just did as part of my life that I enjoyed and was able to share. That creates people connecting with you and collectors. And I think that's, very important with art. A lot of artists, might sell one piece to a random person that they never see again, but that person that comes back and buys a third, second, and fourth, that's very, very special when you realize that they've engaged with you that much and you've engaged, with them. And, it's so important. Yeah. Yeah, that's and that's a lot of what we talk about. Other artists. It's funny because you go to a show, you're there for a whole weekend, and you're always set up next to a couple artists, and you have artists across from you, and it's funny because then you have that small little community that you build over the weekend where you really get to know your neighbors, and you just bounce ideas off each other. Um, so that's um, you learn a lot from that, and you learn a lot from other artists. And yeah, so online or in person, I found for me online sales are kind of hard, and I don't pursue them that much. I know a lot of artists do, and I think it's great. But I think for me, when I'm out there and everything I put into a photo, it's really to be um, experienced, in a large format, in a larger picture. Yeah, I really work on, images, like I said, that are very clean and clear, and that can really translate, larger. And I think you lose that when you see images online. So I mean, seeing my images online and then versus seeing them, at a show, I think are two different things. And so for me, I really rely on the art shows, and it's, I'm looking at ways to expand, but for me right now, I really rely on the money I put into a show. I rely on the marketing, like you guys are doing, to bring out the buyers, and the promoters, and what they do into bringing people in. And for me, it's like I get the greatest real estate for the weekend. I get all of the marketing done for me, and all I got to do is people watch, and try to connect with people and sell my work. And so that's where all my focus goes right now. I mean, I think every artist hopes, and a lot of them are in galleries and have other means of selling. So someday, I definitely want to expand more. But for me right now, so following up with my customers, with making sure that they have what they want. If I bring it over, I get it exactly the way they want it on their wall, that, there's no damage, and just making sure that you know, they have that satisfaction of knowing that whatever value they put into it, monetarily is realized, and that I'm not just, trying to sell them something. So when we go through the jury process, so any art show that you want to do, there's a website called Zapplication. That's how we get into the art shows, and we have to share a shot of our booth, what it looks like, with our pictures in it. They want to see that, so as they jury it, they can get an idea what our booth is going to look like at their show. And then we include 3 to 4, usually, pieces, pictures, whatever our medium is. We give a description, we give our prices, and all of that. So for me, I put in 3 or 4 of my pictures that I want to, put out there in front, so I can get, accepted, and hopefully they give me a good spot, so a good traffic area. Um, and so they have that work, and so a lot of times I think the promoters then will take those pictures if they want them and use them, and they'll put them in their brochures and their marketing. So she has that, and she's had this picture. This is from 2022. So I've done this with other shows with her. So she just approached me and said, "Hey, can I use this picture as for our marketing on this?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure," because it helps her, it helps me, it helps everybody. Well, talking about the picture that you have on the backdrop here, um, I will have that picture there. It'll be the largest picture that I show. It'll be 90 inches across by 60 inches high, so it's a rather large picture. It's in a triptych form, 3 panels. So there is that. So you're going to see, my more popular work. You're going to see some of my more favorite work that's kind of lasted, through the years for me that people connect with, and I still love looking at. That's important for me too. I have things on the wall that may never sell, but I like looking at. So I'm at the show, I can just look at that and kind of get lost in it myself. But you'll see new work too, and one of the new things I've really gotten into is, and I've done it over the years, but I really enjoy it too. It's kind of become my second favorite is long exposure night rocket launches, and I have a few that are really nice, and I have one that I do big is a 60-inch across by 40, which really shows a lot of the detail and a lot of the star alignment with the rocket, and there's a lot that goes into it, and it's one of those things that draw people in too, and I think that's important as well as bringing people in is having something that grabs their attention. We call them showstoppers, right? You make them your big piece. You try to get that person that's walking by that maybe didn't want to look at your work or anything, but it just draws them in, and then as it draws them in, more of your work becomes apparent to them, and they start engaging in what you're doing and in the story you're telling. Please come out. Please support your local artists and other artists that come in from around the country. It's very important for us. It's our lifeblood, and we work really hard at it, and we want to connect with you. And I guarantee you'll see unique and diverse art that you'll fall in love with from somebody, and if you do, please support them. It'll mean the world to them, and please come out and see us.